Evolution, that beautiful thing that gave you the ability to watch this very video. But in the world of Mario, species are obviously very different from us. Besides the obvious humans and Koopas, the other species are weird. So that's why I'll discuss the root causes of why the enemies look how they do now. Because of how they evolved in their environment to look how they look now and we love them. And before getting into it, I should say I have no qualifications in the sciences, so all this is me doing guesswork and my very limited understanding of evolution. Starting off with the toads, the lovable citizens of the Mushroom Kingdom. Now, for this, we'll first have to examine the environment of which these species inhabit, and what their diet is, as those two are pretty important factors for evolution, and also any predators in the area that influence any change in their development or evolution. And so, starting with the toads, what we see is round mushroom heads, stubby bodies, though this does seem like most species, even the humans, are stubby, so we'll attribute that to stylistic choices for once in this video, and no sharp teeth. So we can see that the toads are a herbivore species, most likely due to the lack of sharp teeth, and now looking at the toad surroundings, which is obviously the Mushroom Kingdom, which looking around the area in the multiple depictions, we see mushrooms like the mushroom platforms or the mushroom power-ups that have similar patterns and looks to the top of Toad's head. So we could use this information to see that the toads or toad ancestor probably faced predators that viewed the toads from above. So their heads developed in a way so that the toads could blend into the surrounding mushrooms of the area. So from all this, we can see that the toads would have evolved from being herbivores who live by mushrooms, and so their appearances evolved to blend in the surroundings, so some aerial predator, maybe like Klepto, but Mario has very few flying enemies, so it's kinda hard to predict any further. The next species I like to discuss is the piranha plants, which aren't plants like Venus flytrap, but animals. And you may ask, how do I know this? Well, in New Super Mario Bros. 2, in tower levels, we see skeleton piranha plants, which means that the piranha plants aren't plants. And because the skeleton is internal, that means yes, they are animals. So, now let's look at their appearance. Piranha plants have sharp teeth, spotted appearance like mushrooms, and long, slender bodies like snakes. So, obviously they're carnivores, we can get that out of the way. But now, onto, what do they eat? Well, let's start with their habitats, which, while yes, usually pipes, but also mostly in the Mushroom Kingdom, which is mostly covered in mushrooms. Like with the toads, we can assume that their pattern was to blend in with the mushrooms to, well, snap out and go munch on any poor creature that walks past them, like they do in Mario 64. But now, onto a pretty big part of piranha plants. Their eyeless face, which is pretty strange given how most animals have eyes to see. Well, we need to examine the piranha plants a bit more, and we get to see that they live mostly in pipes, or in the dirt, that lead underground, where we see most piranha plants usually are, which means that they really only go to the surface for food, and so it's fair to assume that they develop like moles, where because of their mostly underground life, their eyesight is extremely underdeveloped, or have possibly lost the ability to see, or just have very, very tiny eyes. Next up, bloopers and amps. Now these things came from the pits of hell to make people suffer. Alright, but the actual next species I want to talk about is the family of Mario enemies, being the enemies coming from the Familia Parietes, aka the wall animals, like Thwomps, Bombs, Thwimps, etc. Now, let's look at their appearance. They all, well, look like stone, and they also all live in places where they will blend in, like Chain Chomp Rooms, or Whomp's Fortress, or Fluffy Bluff, which both offer natural and man-made habitats, and their attacks are always ambushes, or mostly ambushes. It's what we can deduce that they are ambush predators in stony environments that they use as camouflage. And as for their diets, besides tox boxes, they mostly have flat or wonky teeth, and seeing how this family of animals hunts via squashing their prey, their teeth health is probably poor due to them having to squish their prey and scrape the pancake off the floor, so their teeth are probably easily damaged from, digging into dirt and the ground. and the other outlier being bombs, which launch out the walls, so it's fair to assume that they operate more like trapdoor spiders, to where something comes by their little cubby, and they launch out and eat it. Alrighty, but the last enemy that's gonna get the privilege of a full discussion is the fuzzies. Now, from what we can see, fuzzies, they're like spiky thorns, I guess you'd call it, flat teeth, and horde-based hunting, like seen in most instances of them. Now, for their diet, with their teeth being flat, it's fair to say that they're like herbivores, but their in-game actions don't support that, as we see that they mostly attach themselves on rails, or when them just by themselves, they mostly act like parasites, and heck, in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, they actually drain the player's HP, or FP, so it's fair to assume that these guys probably hunt by tearing off small pieces of flesh with their thorns or whatever, and feasting. And we also see that they can reproduce asexually, meaning reproduction without a partner, which draws me to believe that fuzzies evolved like starfish, and heck, they even sorta kinda resemble starfish if you like squint your eyes a bit. And so, also like starfish who don't have any teeth FYI, do it by using your arms, much like how we're theorizing about fuzzies. And so with everything discussed, it's fair to say that fuzzies evolved as mostly predatory animals that eats what comes by, and by using their spikes to get edible pieces into their mouth. Now, there are some minor species I want to add that are pretty obvious, like the mimic enemies like block hoppers, which yeah, probably just blend in and strike like stick bugs, podoboos, which are probably like lava fish or something, pokies, which ambush predator, look like the surroundings, and honestly, you can take the main four and apply this to almost all other enemies in the Mario world. But that's where I'll end this video. If you have any ideas, then please let me know. But if you like what you saw, like and subscribe, and if not, tell me why in the comments, and I'll see y'all later.